Hello and welcome to Gardener's World. This week we're all on the road, visiting all 4 RHS gardens up and down the country. We'll be looking for inspiration from their wonderful displays, as well as garnering all sorts of tips to bring back to our own gardens, whatever their soil and climatic conditions. All 4 gardens are vastly different from each other, but nonetheless, the gardeners at each of them not only produce wonderful, inspiring displays, but also lead the way. They're at the very cutting edge of horticulture. I'm here at RHS Wisley in Surrey. It's the flagship RHS garden. Joe will be at Harlow Carr, the most northerly RHS garden, discovering tips on propagation and getting inspirational ideas from the main borders.
I love this combination here, but being a Hastata rosea, then the wonderful pink aster that looks absolutely stunning.
Rachel heads east to Hyde Hall in Essex, one of the driest parts of the UK.
And here they've created a dry garden specifically to explore the huge diversity of plants that can thrive in low rainfall.
And Monty's in the southwest at Rosemoor, getting inspiration for vibrant plant combinations in their iconic hot borders.
Most gardens at this time of year are thinning out and getting a bit weak. This feels positively volcanic. I mean, the whole place is on the boil.
The soil here at Wisley is light and free draining. It's sandy and acid. In the summer it can be extremely hot here. Occasionally they've recorded the highest temperatures in the country. And you'd expect, it's being Surrey, that it would experience fairly mild winters. Not a bit of it. Sometimes it's extremely cold here because it's low-lying. This is a vast garden and it's constantly evolving and going forward. And also self-sustaining. Lots of the plants in the beds and borders here, they grow themselves, and to that end they've got a specially dedicated seed collection team. And those seeds are sent not only all over the world, but also through a special seed distribution scheme to RHS members. But in any case, I just can't help collecting seed and growing new plants from it. It's in my blood, and when you've done it once, you can't help it. Well, I've had permission to take some seed from this lovely centaurea. This is a perennial cornflower, it's Centaurea atropurpurea, and I've never seen it before. And I'd love this lovely big wild plant in my garden. And it's packed not only with flowers, but also with ripe seed. Now at this stage, and on a nice dry day like this, it's absolutely perfect, and I'm going to stuff a few of these heads into a paper bag and save them for later. But a lot of the seeds will drop out. But what happens at that stage, let's try that one, see if I can show you, is that all this dross, all this light fluffy stuff, which are the little parachutes designed to take that seed away, and they're just beginning to fly, so you can tell that seed is ready. And if you just go into the centre here, you can see all this fluff, and amongst it, all these pale seeds. And what I'll do eventually is a bit of winnowing, so that all that fluff just takes off, all those little parachutes fly away, and left in my hand are those precious seeds. So into there they'll go. I'm really looking forward to growing this. Well, growing from seed is a great way to propagate, but it's by no means the only method. And Joe's been up north to Harlow Carr to find out about a different way of growing new plants.
Harlow Carr sits on the edge of the Yorkshire Dales. It's the most northerly RHS garden, and the weather here is really changeable.
Well, I haven't been to Harlow Carr for, well, too many years. And this is the weather they have to contend with. Really strong winds up here and tons of rain. Looks like it's going to brighten up in a minute. But I have to say, the garden has changed considerably. It looks absolutely stunning. These late summer perennials mixed in with grasses just look wonderful. I love this combination here. Verbena hastata rosea in the foreground, it's just finishing flowering. Then the wonderful pink aster there, that's Novi Anglii, and the majestic Stipa gigantea at the back doing its thing. It's been doing it for months, it still looks absolutely stunning. But what is so important about this garden is scale. There's many large trees and perennial planting, but it's the shrubs that are doing a really important job of tying those two elements together and also helping to see the garden right through the winter.
At 700 feet above sea level, winters can be harsh, and to ensure plants can be replaced if lost due to a cold snap, the best thing to do is to take cuttings. Andrew Willocks has worked here for 16 years and plays a key part in the maintenance and development of the site.
Now, I've got a couple of these Hebe Sutherlandii in my garden. I've been really fortunate that they're still okay, but a lot of people have lost Hebes over the last couple of winters.
We're quite lucky really with Hebes because on this particular variety there's loads and loads of ideal material there, and I've just taken a cutting with a small heel there.
You're only taking a tiny little piece of wood then?
Yeah, they're fairly easy to do in that respect.
Into plastic bag to keep all the moisture and stop them drying out?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not just evergreen shrubs that can be propagated in this way. There's a range of plants that you can take cuttings from at this time of year.
Okay, here we have Viburnum bondentensi dawn.
It's really bendy, isn't it? It's sort of,
it is,
that's what
yeah.
Semi-ripe is really, isn't it?
It's at the base it's just starting to harden a bit. That's a really good example of semi-ripe cutting it.
And this is a deciduous shrub, of course, as opposed to the evergreen ones. You want to get some of the older, it's all this year's growth, but some of the earlier growth, as it were.
And the softer growth, we tend to reduce that at the top.
So we're taking that off at the top.
Hopefully get a fairly decent plant from that for the following year.
Yeah, you get a decent shrub out of that in no time, I'd expect.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the cutting material.
Yeah. First thing I have to do is make sure the knife is as sterile as possible.
Should we go for the Hebe first?
Yeah, sure. Just tidy up the heel at the base. Very important, the heel at the base of the cutting, because it has the meristematic or dividing tissue, which is important in initiating root development from the base of the cutting.
Okay, that's where it's all going to grow from.
Yeah.
What compost have you got here?
It's just a 50-50 propagation mix of perlite and multi-purpose compost.
You wetted it first.
Yeah.
And you just pop that in there.
Yeah.
And that's it. Simple as that, really.
Yeah. Onto the misting unit or under a prop cover or...
now, hang on a minute, you see, misting unit prop... Well, most people at home don't have misting units and prop covers.
You could alternatively use something like one of these propagation tops on a standard tray, preferably on a windowsill. That should provide the perfect humid conditions for cuttings.
And how about the viburnum then? Because it's a slightly different technique, isn't it?
The trouble with this cutting is it's got quite large leaves on it, so the plant will naturally lose a lot of water through transpiration, but to reduce that transpiration rate, we just cut the leaves in half, like that.
A semi-ripe wood is going to develop quicker than a hardwood cutting that you would take later in the year?
Yeah, the main thing is to make sure that the conditions don't get too cold at night, otherwise rooting will be held back.
Well, it's been great coming back to Harlow Carr and seeing the fabulous gardens. And it's also interesting to see how they're preparing for winter, because the last 2 winters have been so harsh that so many gardeners have lost a lot of plants. And taking cuttings is just so easy that it guarantees that you can keep the same plants in your garden next year.
Last winter was so vicious that I lost all my penstemons, every single one of them stone dead. And this particular penstemon has special significance for me. It's Huel Pink Bedder, and it was the very first penstemon that ever I grew. I just love it, and I know that it's a good garden plant because it's received the Award of Garden Merit from the RHS, a true sign of its garden worthiness. And here at Wisley, there are 4 borders which are devoted to growing just such award-winning plants. Curator Colin Crosby created the borders to highlight the best AGM plants from trials the RHS is running. So these are your new Award of Garden Merit borders. They're looking brilliant.
Certainly are, really good, and just planted in April of this year.
This year?
This year.
So what are the kind of criteria that these plants have got to fulfil?
These plants have been tested for various criteria. 1, they stand up to the weather conditions.
Right.
2, they'll have a long flowering period. And 3, that they're resistant to pests and diseases. There are other criteria, but those are the main one for gardeners at home.
Right, so what you're really telling people when you put this little emblem, it's a sort of cup, isn't it, in an AGM?
You see it on a pack of bulbs. We've got some actually in the wheelbarrow there. There's the logo down there. That's what you're looking for in garden centres and nurseries throughout the country.
Right, so when you buy a plant that's been awarded this AGM, you know immediately that that plant is going to do well for you.
Plants that will perform, that will be reliable and good in the garden.
Right, I mean it's not every plant that's been tested, is it? But there must have been quite a lot. How long has it been going?
It's been going for over 70 years. We've tested annuals, we've tested perennials, trees, shrubs, fruit trees, vegetables, the whole range. So there's a great range of plants that have got that award.
Right, and in these borders, they're mainly perennials, aren't they? And what beautiful perennials they are too. And I see, quite new plants like this lovely geranium roseanne, which is one of my favourites.
The geranium roseanne is wonderful, but just behind it, look at the little blue campanula, Pritchard's variety. That's been around for a great number of years. So new plants get tested. And old plants too.
Right, well, I've been growing it a long time.
And the colour scheme that you've got in here, the blues, the yellows, and we're actually just going to add a little hydrangea that's got creamy yellow flowers into it as well.
Right, so are you going to change these borders or are you going to keep them the same?
They'll be evolving all the time because as new trials happen, we'll take some out, we'll bring new plants in, so they'll always be evolving, adding bulbs to give a spring interest as well.
Right, this is a real beaut. I mean, in this case, why would this have been awarded this?
Well, this got the Award of Garden Merit following trials in 2008, big flower heads on it, but the stem supports the flower hedge, it lasts a long time, and the flower fades to a most beautiful pink as well.
And a perfect time to plant it too.
This is a great time in gardens because the soil's warm, whether you're planting perennials, trees and shrubs, the roots will go out, they will establish, and you'll get far better results in your garden next year.
I think people are quite shy of autumn planting, because now that everything's containerised, you always tend to think about spring planting and early summer, but it's just the job now, isn't it?
Just the job, and even better doing it at this time of year for so many plants.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just got to get the hole dug here. If you could
I'm rather envious,
Oh, it's lovely soil. It's warm. It's moist.
Beautiful.
Oh, if you could knock that out of the container for me.
There you are.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to tease the roots a little bit to help them establish. There we go. And then what I'm going to do, if you could just hold that a second for me.
Certainly. I'm not used to being the apprentice. It's nice.
I'm going to put some mycorrhiza, which are beneficial fungi, on the roots.
Yeah. Got to be in contact with those roots.
They must
for it to work.
They must touch the roots, and these just help the plant to establish.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's facing the right way so we get the best side.
Yes. I always believe in that. Showing people your best side, it's important, isn't it?
Very important.
Do you think I'd go to get an award of garden merit,
Oh,
Colin?
you'd get an award of garden merit and a gold medal at the same time.
The great thing about the AGM is that it highlights for we gardeners plants of special excellence. Most of them are very tolerant. But what happens if you garden in extreme conditions? Rachel's been to Hyde Hall in Essex to find out how they cope with a dry and very exposed site, and to take a look at an exciting new project.
Believe it or not, if you take an average rainfall, there are places in the UK that are drier than Beirut or Jerusalem. With just 600 millimetres of rain per annum, Hyde Hall in Essex is the arid sibling in the family of RHS gardens. So this is the ideal place to look at gardening in really parched conditions. And here they've created a dry garden specifically to explore the huge diversity of plants that can thrive in low rainfall. Ian LeGros is the curator here at Hyde Hall, and the dry garden is just one area he's responsible for. This is fantastic, the view over there as well. That's great. Ian, talk me through the main characteristics of drought-tolerant plants.
A lot of them have very small needle-like leaves, so a very small surface area, so they're not losing lots of water. Some of the plants have bigger leaves, will have a very thick, waxy cuticle to them, which helps them hold on to moisture. Other things are the sort of plants tend to sort of grow sort of quite low to the ground. As you look around on the dry garden here, there aren't many sort of trees or very tall shrubs. Or things like the juniper just over there have very sort of thick resinous sap, as well as needle-like, scale-like leaves. And then we've got other bluer plants like the euphorbia, which has a number of characteristics on it. You've got the silver foliage, so it reflects the harmful rays of the sun, very thick sap in that, and also it's able to store a bit of water as well. So just in the dry garden, just sitting here, you can see a number of adaptations which make them very good at living off our rainfall in Essex.
So does that mean that you never have to irrigate this garden?
We only ever water plants on here if they've been new introductions, a bit of replanting, or like with the new section that we're making at the moment, we will irrigate that, but that will be done through watering cans or hose pipes. We won't use sprinklers or anything like that to do it. And after its first season though, it'll be alone, just waiting for the rain to come.
They're on their own.
They're on their own, very much so.
So the dry garden's been such a success, you're making it bigger.
We've doubled it inside.
Huge space, it's enormous, isn't it?
It's around about half the size of a football pitch, I suppose, this lower, the new section.
It's going to be impressive,
Hopefully,
definitely.
hopefully.
And you know what, I think seeing it at this stage is fascinating because you go right from the beginning, you can see the boulders here.
Yes, yeah.
But what else do you do? What do you do to the soil to make it right
Well,
for
the soil we've mixed in about 50% is sharp sand and grit. So it sort of really adds to the drainage, and that actually also overlies some rubble that we've put in.
Right, yes, because you can see down in the bottom of the hole, it's obviously a little bit more wet, but this has got a lot of grit in it. Now, if you live in a part of the country where the rainfall's much higher, can you still do this sort of dry garden?
I think you could actually. Again, you might have to work a little bit harder at the drainage to improve it a little bit more, build the soil up. But also there's great selection of plants. We're growing them very, very hard here, so they will accept a little bit more rainfall throughout the year.
Okay.
But the key really is getting the drainage right for the winter months.
It's the winter wet that they really dislike.
Yeah, they can put up with the cold temperature, they can put up with the wet, but they can't put up with both together over that sort of prolonged 3-month period at the same time.
So you've already got here some of the key plants. You've got the cupressus over there, and you've got those beautiful Stipa gigantea, which can look marvellous. Look at this little sedum.
Yeah, the pink flowers and the foliage go really well together. And sedum's one of those plants that will very much hold on to water, like a succulent.
If you want to try some plants for dry gardens, then here are a few that really caught my eye today at Hyde Hall. The coral-coloured blooms of Zauschneria californica et Carmen smother the plant from the height of summer to the first weeks of winter. For one of the best blue flowers at this time of year, you can't beat Ceratostigma plumbaginoides. Resist the temptation to treat the plant too well, as it looks best when it's grown hard in poor soil. Perovskia blue spire is a tough little plant with beautifully serrated grey leaves and spires of mauve blue flowers. Don't be too quick with the secateurs, as the stems bleach to a stunning white in winter.
That's the first few in out of 20,000, so...
we might be here for a few hours.
A few hours, yeah, I would have thought so, yeah.
On the other side of the country, Monty's been to another RHS garden, where the conditions and climate couldn't be more different.
I'm in North Devon at Rosemoor, the RHS's West Country garden. And conditions here are mild, the seasons are long, and it's very wet. And this means that there's a wide range of plants here, and they all grow well and lushly. The soil here at Rosemoor is a heavy acidic loam, which fundamentally means clay. Now that's hard work for the gardeners, but it holds the moisture. And of course, it's exceptionally good for roses, even this late on in the year. About 20 years ago, I stayed for a weekend near here, and I remember thinking I must go into Rosemoor, but I never did. So this is my first visit, and I want to see as much as possible. But the part that I especially want to see on this trip is the hot garden. I like the way the path is curving round, so it feels it's flowing through. The whole feeling is like being in the middle of a border. And what's particularly good, and which adds to this sensation of heat, is these great big clumps. So these enormous swathes of heleniums and monadas. Anybody can pop some reds and purples and oranges in the ground and call it hot planting. But this is more, it's got energy. It's got a kind of subterranean richness, whereas most gardens at this time of year are thinning out and getting a bit weak. This feels positively volcanic. I mean, the whole place is on the boil. I love the way that the garden is full of subtleties as well as power. This Niphophia, a bee sunset, which I've not come across before and I shall definitely get for my own garden back at Longmeadow, looks fantastic next to the Pleobastus with these stripes of green and yellow. That's really subtle and rich and strong and will endure. That's the key thing. It's not just a one-hit wonder. You could look at that for days and days and enjoy it. Rebecca Goldstern is a very familiar plant and lots of us have it in our gardens, but it looks fabulous here. It's none the worse for being well known, but this is even better. This is Coreopsis Schnittgold. It may not be a beautiful name, but it's a fabulous plant. You've got this rich, intense buttercup yellow borne on these tall, curving stems, and they've woven it through the garden. And I'll tell you what, I'll definitely be growing this in the dual garden next year. The great thing about going to visit a wonderful garden is that it doesn't matter if the soil is different from your own or the climate is completely different, because there is bound to be something there, a plant combination, a new way of doing things that you can take back home and apply to your own garden. And I tell you, that's exactly what I shall be doing now when I get back to Longmeadow.
One idea that I'm totally blown away by is this lovely combination of Malus hoopahensis with Clematis tangutica climbing up into its branches. Lovely pale yellow flowers and these rich red berries. It's a quandary for a lot of people just how to support their clematis, but I think you couldn't do better than this lovely natural sort of association. It's certainly going to inspire me. Well, that's something for next year, but there are plenty of practical jobs that you can be getting on with this weekend.
Now the evenings are getting colder, it's a good idea to lift and store your pumpkin crop. Only choose sound fruit with no sign of rotting. Cut the pumpkin from the parent plant, ensuring you have a good length of stem so that if any rotting does occur, it won't die back into the fruit. Then place the harvested fruit in a warm, dry position such as a shed or windowsill and enjoy throughout the autumn and winter.
Now that the birds have flown the nest, it's an ideal time to clean out nesting boxes. Any debris left inside can harbour parasites, so a good clean will make the boxes great places to roost and set up home next year.
Gooseberries are the first soft fruit you take hardwood cuttings from. Select a healthy shoot 30 to 45 centimetres long. Tidy up the base by cutting just below a bud. Remove the soft tip by cutting at an angle just above a bud. Strip off the foliage but leave the top 2 leaves. Snip off all the thorns to make your cutting easier to handle. Make a slit in prepared soil with a spade and push the cutting into half its length, and you should have roots by April.
In itself, deadheading is not a big job, but it's probably the most important thing you can do at this time of year. If you can cut back faded blooms every couple of days, your garden will be full of colour right through to the first frost.
What a treasure trove Wisley is. Not just of seeds, but in common with all the RHS gardens. It's just so packed full of brilliant ideas and inspiration. Next week we're on at the earlier time of 8 and Monty will be back in Longmeadow. But meanwhile, get out there, collect some seeds and above all, enjoy your gardening.